Hi everyone, greetings from National Skills Network. This is Madhuri and I'm back with a very different kind of discussion today, and we are focusing on women freelancers. I'm sure when you hear the word women freelancers, you know the kind of contribution they make to the economy in India and also globally. Lots of women prefer to work, in a flexible way, taking options for working from home and innovative ways of contributing to the economic development. But they also need help and guidance at various times, and also they might need some support to build their careers and become professionally successful. So, with this context, now I would like to introduce our experts today who are from GIZ and have done considerable amount of research and projects and various programs to contribute to women's development as professionals, especially those who are freelancers and who are also a part of the gig economy. So, let me introduce you to Miriam Oliver, who is the Junior Advisor, Gig Economy Initiative at GIZ, and Pooja Gianchandani, who is the Global Lead on Skills for Gig Economy at GIZ. So welcome to this discussion, both of you. I'm so glad we are going to speak on a very important topic today.
Thank
Thank you for
you.
inviting us.
Yeah, so let me get started by asking you about, considering your experience in various countries and bringing the global perspective. Do you perceive that men and women experience gig work or freelancing work differently? What are your views from the experience you've had? We can start with Miriam.
Sure. Thank you. And lovely to be here. I think you can kind of break it down into two sort of different ways in terms of what you mean about different experiences. I think the first point that's important to mention is gig work encompasses a large number of sectors. You are familiar with maybe the visible sectors that we see, courier drivers, transport drivers, but there are also many sectors that are more invisible. And these are, in fact, the sectors where you will find more women prevalent. So some might be beauty, care, and domestic services. I know there are a number of sort of platforms operating in India operating these services, but also increasingly growing are the sort of cloud work or online digital freelancers. And this is a large growing industry that has mostly taken place at home and contributes to the digital and AI economy. So this can be anything from content moderators to data labelers to transcribers and anyone in that sort of digital supply chain. And there we are seeing a large proportion of women, sometimes even more women than men are engaged in this sector. I know particularly, for example, in the MENA region, we see more women engaged in these digital services compared to, for example, the standards of service economy. So I would say simply the sectors that women are involved in are different. But then we also come to the sort of second point, which is actually then about, okay, how do women experience the economy? And maybe I'll pass that over to Pooja to sort of touch on that.
Yeah, when I think of experiencing the gig economy, I think of three key aspects. And Miriam, we observed this also, especially when we were working with women freelancers in Kenya. The first part is about access to gig work. How do they find the opportunities to access work online? And most of the times, the women depend on the male counterpart, whether it's a son or a brother or a husband or any other member of the community, to help them find this access through the digital technologies or the platforms and find the work. So the first way they experience it differently is most of them do not have the direct access to gig work or platform work or online freelancing. The second part is affordability.
Yeah.
I have spoken to so many women workers, especially in India, who work on these home based care services. They often tell me, I do get a lot of tasks or I get work on my platform, but sometimes I can't afford the petrol or the uh, gas to go and perform the task, or I don't have the equipment. Some, especially Miriam, you were talking about beauty and care services. A lot of platforms expect them to offer services at a very high standard, and for that there is a whole kit they need to have. So sometimes they don't have the my basic funds or money to go and be able to buy that and to be able to offer that service. So they lose out on work opportunities, and then because they don't take those tasks, the algorithm starts to put them down, and the algorithm starts to discriminate, or they get disadvantaged in this whole algorithmic management cycle, which I think Miriam will talk about in a minute.
Okay.
Then I think the last part is acknowledgement. A lot of times, women also have a lot of other issues to tackle.
Hmm.
For example, at home, they have issues to tackle at in form of online gender-based violence. So the whole experience of a woman of online freelancing is far different from that of a man, and we can talk about it as we go along, but it is now proven through many academic papers that algorithms also have biases when you register yourself as a woman versus when you register yourself as a man. So, those are some of the topics and areas that really change the experience of a man versus a woman when working in online freelancing.
Okay. Well, listening to both of you, I'm quite enlightened. I think our audience are also quite enlightened to hear that, these are all different aspects about how we see these two, the men and women working in freelance mode very differently. And also, I feel for women, like you just were explaining, Pooja, about, the affordability and other things. And I also think there isn't much awareness also about, let's say, for example, it's not just a resume or a profile which works for you when you are in this kind of work. You need to build portfolios, you need to consciously build networks, right? There's so many other things. So this brings us to a very important aspect, and that's where this conversation is focused today. We are going to talk about mentorship and peer learning for women freelancers. So this assumes a greater importance also because you have released a toolkit based on the programs you conducted across different countries. So let us keep that in mind and also take the conversation forward. So Miriam, why do you think this mentorship is so important, and how is it unique or different, and how does it work for women workers, and how do we take it forward?
Yeah, great question. And I think you kind of really get to the heart of why we decided to run a mentorship program. We had spoken to workers' organizations, policymakers, workers themselves, trade union representatives, and sort of time and time again, I guess, sort of came up this question of simply understanding that I am not alone. I am a gig worker, I am a platform worker, or I am a freelancer. There is a term for that. There are certain characteristics for this work. There are other people who are doing this work. And I can sort of learn from others. And we really sort of said, okay, there is a definite need for knowledge to be shared because right now we're very much so in this sort of wild west of platform economy, freelancing. Who is it? Who belongs to it? What are my rights? How do I engage? Like you said, do I need to have a resume? Do I need to do a portfolio? Do I need a LinkedIn profile? And so many open questions. And that's why we sort of came to this idea of mentorship, of sharing knowledge, of building a community. And I think in comparison maybe to other formats like traditional classroom frontal learning settings or sort of top-down coaching settings, we wanted to create something that was A, very flexible, because that is what many sort of women need, but also something that sort of, I guess, harnessed the energy of women workers. How best do we function? I remember speaking to an organization in India, actually, and they said there's so many informal WhatsApp groups out there existing where women exchange their IDs, exchange their information. That's where the real sort of source of knowledge is. And so that's what this mentorship program does, is creates a community for people to share knowledge, to build off each other, from young to learn from old, old to learn from young, building also connection to other people, this sort of intrinsic value, I think, and also to be something that can build off what is already existing. Like, we spoke with sort of different institutes, and to integrate, if you already have people in your community,
Yeah.
create this community function on which they can then exchange information on. So I think that's the unique factor about mentorship that I've seen in Kenya, in Ghana,
Mhm.
speaking with other partners, is that there is a need for a space for
Mhm.
women to come together to exchange about this new world that they are encountering.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And Pooja, would you want to add anything from India? Like how, where do women feel safe or secure to share information? Like Miriam already mentioned about the use of WhatsApp. I would say that these are WhatsApp still is a very informal thing compared to LinkedIn, right? I mean, but then you see more and more women perhaps take to platforms like WhatsApp more easily, because maybe very professional platforms like LinkedIn demand a very different kind of, commitment to the platform, I would say. What do you have to say on this?
I think you both are absolutely right, and you hit the nail, Madhuri, in the sense of the platforms and the tools that are out there. There are so many, and that's why one of the challenges I could observe is that they don't know where to connect and how to connect and how to keep in touch, because there are just too many platforms. There are Facebook groups, there are LinkedIn groups. In India, I know we are very digitally forward, so we have the whole life is almost part of your life is being lived online. And I think, to what Miriam alluded, I want to say, why do we need to create this network and the link is because, unlike many of us, again, when we think of work, we think of a formal setup, a 9 to 5 job, or maybe a 24 by 7 into 365 job. But still, we are meeting colleagues, we are meeting at a point in time during the day. We are physically co located. But here we are talking about a workforce that is absolutely dispersed. They are not meeting regularly, they have no spaces to connect with each other. And that's where I think the challenge is. And that's when you bring women together. And when you bring women together from different generational groups, also, it changes the dynamics. I mean, there's a very famous example Miriam and I will love to share, that in Kenya, when we set up the first pilot and the women came together, we saw a very interesting phenomena. The older women, they were very technologically challenged. So the younger women in the group, they started to help them how
Okay.
to sign up on a platform, how to create your profile, how do you pitch for yourself to the clients, how do you politely ask for a rating. And the younger women, they were facing some kind of online violence, or they were being harassed, or they were being stalked. And the older women started to help them on how to, protect yourself, find your space. So it was all very organic, which was happening, but it could happen only because we were able to create this platform or a safe space for them to come together.
Yeah. So this is something which is really interesting, and also I think the perspective of building a community gets even more stronger. And Miriam, you already mentioned in great detail about the community aspect. Now let's look at something about the core values. For example, the value of trust, confidence, security, etc. Where does this play out in the programs that you conducted for these groups of women?
Yes, I mean, Pooja already sort of alluded to this, right? We're sort of achieving a space that doesn't exist for people to come together. And I think it was also an opportunity for women to exchange on things that were also very intimate. I mean, online gender-based violence is a problem in the digital economy, but many women don't feel comfortable to share about it. They might think it's normalized. The structural discrimination against women that we see in our everyday society is also present online and is, if not possibly more concerning, and women don't know how to exchange on this. And we through these mentorship programs, created a space where women would share things that were intimate or personal, or maybe about it would extend beyond work. How do I deal with my care responsibilities? How do I deal with also encountering sort of male stereotype and women's stereotype images? And I think these values were important for women to be able to share and grow and understand the platform economy. But also beyond that, I think they were crucial to the success of the program. The idea of mentorship is about building a community, but a community only exists when you have, a stake in the game, so to say, when you are truly intrinsically involved, when you care about the members in your community, when you want it to grow. And we found after a few sort of pilot projects that people had to be involved emotionally, not just, showing up because I have to, but because I really care about this. And
Right.
I would say that's kind of a key success criteria also for the longevity of creating a community.
Yeah, you're right. And this actually connects with the toolkit that you launched and also the idea of inclusiveness, which you have discussed at length just now. So, why do you think now, like, or rather, please tell us more about how the toolkit is supporting organizations to make it very inclusive or incorporate consciously all that you were saying now about, let's say, how to overcome discrimination or how to encourage women or how to help them form these groups where the support groups type of things. So how does this work, and how does the toolkit support in all these matters?
I guess just to take it a few steps back, I mean, the very first question you asked us, right, was, okay, how do men and women experience the gig economy differently?
Yeah.
We mentioned a number of these sort of points in terms of, yeah, safety, care responsibilities, flexibility, algorithmic discrimination. And we simply noticed that the training had also needed to be designed for these experiences, to not design for the normative. And that was a key learning for us in these programs. And so the toolkit that we have recently created is sort of an outcome of those programs.
Okay.
And it sort of outlines, okay, what were some of the steps that we took? And I think, for example, I'd say it's important to meet women where they are at. Do you offer a hybrid sessions? Sometimes in person because women like to meet in person. It's important to build this trust, but we also have care responsibilities. Let's offer an online session. Maybe we can offer some data packages to help the women meet online. Are there women with children? Can we offer a creche service so that the women can meet together and have a few hours where they can focus on their career? Can we pair people together who have similarities to ensure that they feel comfortable to share information with? What kind of features can we incorporate in the program to make sure that they are, yeah, meeting women where they are at? And I think that that's one of the key successes that we tried to integrate into this toolkit that we have to help people run programs that will not only meet women, but will also be effective in the long term.
Okay. Yeah. Pooja, would you want to add something specific about mentorship, the focus on mentorship itself from the toolkit? Any highlights or any important points?
I think I want to add 2 points.
Yeah.
It is not a magic wand. It is not going to change the situation immediately. And for this toolkit or mentorship to work, there are two very important prerequisites.
Hmm.
One, the institutions that offer the toolkit or mentorship as a solution have to understand and embrace the challenges and the informality of this type of work. I think that's what we were also discussing earlier today, Madhuri, that a lot of institutions are new to this whole topic. So, first, it requires their preparedness to be able to offer the right inputs as
Hmm.
part of mentorship. The second is this entire program needs to be incentivized, and not just at the level of an implementing institution like a community based organization or a association or a women's group, but at the highest policy level, at the level of a CSR program they have to incentivize these type of initiatives to be implemented as part of schools, as part of colleges, as part of educational institutions, or as part of general any program on women economic empowerment has to have an element of mentorship and mentoring in it for it to have the impact that we are envisioning or talking about. Otherwise it becomes one of an initiative that starts with the program, but once the program ends it fizzles out. So it has to be embedded into the policy cloth or into the policy character of education and training uh, within a certain context, of course. And that's, I think, what is very key to making this mentorship a success. And then I can also talk about the pedagogical side of it, but I think the two most important side is the infrastructure, oh sorry, the institutional preparedness and the incentives to run such a program.
You just mentioned about the institution, the incentives, and these very important points. There is the other part of it when we talk about policy implementation. There are a lot of ground level issues for which also we need to be prepared to face. Like in our earlier conversation related to the gig economy, which we had with you, we were also looking at institutions like educational institutions, if they have to offer training and prepare people to become more. I would say this is also an issue of sensitization, right, about these,
Mm-hmm.
things, and also prepare, women especially to take up this kind of freelancing and gig type of work. What do you have to say about the implementation part of it? Do you have any practical points that you can share with us with reference to the toolkit, of course?
I think Miriam can start talking about the whole curriculum and the inclusive design part of it, and then I can add to it.
I guess I think, yeah, but we're looking sort of specifically at the implementation and thinking about my experience with the partners. Um, like Pooja said, there is no magic wand, and that was sort of how we also designed the toolkit, was for it to be very adaptable. And we filled it with a lot of experiences from previous mentorship programs to sort of say, okay, this is how you can interpret it. The toolkit is not a guide to be followed to the T. Rather, it's a guide to sort of show inspiration and,
Hmm.
yeah, with reference to inclusive design, what does that mean for you and your program? What does that mean for your sort of target audience? Who are you working with? How do you engage with partners or with the ecosystem? We have a sort of a part that is a curriculum, but that's one piece in this very large toolkit, and the curriculum then goes very much so into this point you mentioned about sensibilizing on the platform economy and raising awareness of what it actually is, what are fair working conditions, how do you find your rights, how do you negotiate for fair pay, how do you find jobs in a safe and secure manner. So there are sort of detailed parts of the toolkit which can be sort of, yeah, I would say sort of cut and copy and put into your program, pasted there. We might take a bit of that, we might take a bit of this, and that's, I think, also what we found in our implementation experiences. Nothing can be set in stone.
Yeah.
Adapt to what you have in front of you, and that's where you find your success.
Yeah. Pooja, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, I'm always reminded of something that we love to ask ourselves at GIZ, which is what is the success factor for a
Yeah.
program? And I think for this kind of a program, the biggest success factor is the mentor. Because
Hmm.
this mentorship program is not just about educating, informing, orienting, it was also about one to one mentorship.
Yeah.
But a lot of mentors who might be working as freelancers, who volunteer to give their time and gift their knowledge, might not know how to mentor.
Mm.
Hmm.
So there's a whole onboarding process of how to train the mentor. So there was a training of trainers that we organized, which is also mentioned in the toolkit. There are materials required to do that training. Then to also make the mentors feel comfortable to deal with some
Hmm.
of the questions or some of the topics that the women will bring, because a woman might be having a bad day. She might have had a fight with the husband and she just wants to let it out, and the mentor is not prepared for it. it really changes the whole dynamic of the situation, of the conversation. And we've seen, if we focus on the mentor training and the mentor orientation, it really shifts the whole energy. I mean, I still remember, I don't know, Miriam, if you do, in our e-learning course on maximizing the potential of women in the gig economy, we also have an example of a women freelancer, a freelancer. She shares about how her mentor told her about asking for a contract. She did not know that she could go and ask for a contract.
Mm.
And because the mentor told her that, but why are you working without a contract? And she went back to the employer, and the employer then realized that, oh, I have to give her a contract. So that could be a small aha moment in that mentor mentee conversation, but it just changed the direction for that woman. And then that woman, because she was part of our mentorship community, ended up telling 50 other women about it. And so that's how we hope the ripple effect happens. So I think the success factor for any mentorship program is the mentor, and it requires patient capital, because you will have to go through this process of onboarding everyone about the topic, talking to them about all these different strategies and pedagogical methodologies that we talked about. It takes time, but it has a slow but steady impact.
Yeah. So, and it also connects with skills, for mentoring. They definitely need to have a lot of skills and be prepared, like you mentioned, for various situations, and have that empathy and, all those uh, the soft skills that are needed.
I mean,
Right.
if you allow me another example, Coven. Coven was one of the participants of our first mentorship pilot, na, Miriam? I remember
Mhm.
that. And we kind of gave her the same TOT. Today, Coven is actually become a master trainer.
Okay.
She's she's also grown in her own career path, and she also was part of our presentation at the World Bank during the International Education Conference. And so, I mean, we've also given platform to some of these high performing mentors, but I think in their own self they have the motivation, but they
Hmm.
just needed that small push and nudge to also go into that direction. So I think it on one hand we have these examples, on other hand there are trainers who just came for the certificate, and after the certificate they are not interested.
Yeah.
And so we get all types of experiences, but I think that's how we've tried to put in the toolkit.
Okay. So, Miriam, maybe you can sum up few points which we just heard from Pooja for our audience before we close this conversation. Yeah, the
All
key
right.
points. Yeah.
I mean, like Pooja said, we always kind of think about what are success factors, and I think that's also a nice takeaway for your audience as well. And so I would always come back to this idea of community, whether that's trust, whether that's through building strong mentors, whether that's through sort of building incentives. I think community is very strong, and I think it's very important to the success. Yeah, I also think adaptability, like I mentioned, flexibility. The gig economy is flexible in itself, and therefore you need a training that is also flexible and also adaptive. And I guess three, we didn't totally touch on it, but I really wanted to highlight it, was sort of role models and the idea that
Hmm.
that's what makes mentorship so powerful is that women see other women who come from similar situations finding success, and they might not have ever seen that before. And I've spoken to mentees and mentors alike who have just said, "Hey, it was super nice. I thought this was only for men. I was told that this is only a man's job, and it was super nice to just come in contact with other women who are doing this." So yeah, those are my three sort of success criterias that make a successful mentorship, I think.
Great. Pooja, anything from you? Closing remarks or observations?
I think I forgot about it, but one of the biggest success factor is men.
Hmm.
Until the men in the household or men in the community are ready to support more in women economic participation in the way of giving away a little bit of their space and power, or in the way of taking up a little bit of household responsibility, this cannot work. And we learned this from our first pilot of the mentorship program in Kenya. There were men who signed up to be mentors. And they said, yes, I want to be part of this because I want to learn about this sector. And then in the feedback, they wrote us that this kind of mentorship should also be available for men because they are also struggling with similar issues and similar challenges. And there was also a feedback that maybe men and women should also sit in a room and talk about some of these common issues and topics. And
Yeah.
it's not about one being more powerful than the other, but it's about we are all freelancers and how could we help each other.
Right. So this is in real sense inclusive, I guess, and holistic way of mentoring. So, and also this conversation was really very helpful, and it you gave us so many points to think about, and also raise few questions which I'm sure our audience would be very interested to go through the toolkit and find answers for themselves and use it as a supporting material for them to explore further. And they can always get in touch with you to learn more. So thank you, Miriam and Pooja, for sharing your views and your experience around mentorship and peer learning for women freelancers as a part of the gig economy conversations. Thank you.
Thank you, Madhuri.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.